My phone didn't just ring that evening, it shivered across the wooden table like a trapped bird trying to find a window. I watched his name bloom on the screen, a name that used to mean safety, sleep, and Saturday pancakes. I answered with a smile I had rehearsed for years and rarely used. "Hey, Dad?" For a moment there was nothing but the hush of his breathing, the kind you make when you're about to say something that changes the shape of a room. When his voice arrived, it was low, careful, and already far away. "We're leaving tomorrow," he said. "Your car is already sold." The words landed like a box dropped on my chest. I looked around the room as if the furniture might explain what he meant. "Leaving tomorrow? What are you talking about?" "And my car? Why is my car sold?" "It's decided," he said. "Pack your things." The line went dead the way some feelings do quickly, without ceremony. I stood in the quiet and listened to the house remember how to breathe. Somewhere outside, a siren drifted by, uninterested in our personal emergency. I sank to the floor beside my half-zipped suitcase and pressed my palms flat against the cool wood, grounding myself in the only truth I had left. I was still here. My car wasn't just metal and paint. It was where I learned the geography of grief, how to take long roads so the hurt had more time to stretch out thin. It was the place where I spoke to Mom in the rearview mirror, convincing myself the glass could keep secrets. It was my last, small, borrowed freedom. And he had sold it like an old couch. The night pulled his dark sweater over the house. I tried to sleep and couldn't. I tried to cry and couldn't. I sat with the kind of silence that becomes a person and sits beside you. At 3 in the morning, the air felt thinner than advice. I walked barefoot to the garage. The motion sensor light stuttered awake and showed me a rectangle of emptiness where my car should have been. In its place, a black oil stain gripping the concrete, patient as a shadow that had lost its body. I touched the key hook on the wall. The nail was bare, a tiny wordless confession. His study smelled like old coffee and late apologies. The desk lamp was still on, a small yellow moon over a mess of papers. I told myself I had no right to pry, that if there was a wall between us it wasn't my job to dig through it. But rules are for days that don't threaten to erase you. The top page was a printed email. The subject line didn't blink. Final settlement, do not contact again. Under it, the kind of sentences that put knots in stomachs. Payment completed, property transferred. Relocation to be confirmed by November. I heard my own breath change. Beneath the stack of envelopes, a photo peeked out like a secret dared to be found. I slid it free. Mom stood in front of a white house with blue shutters, her smile thinner but still trying. By the porch, a man I didn't recognize lingered at the edge of the frame. Someone had circled him in red ink, not angrily, just firmly. On the back, in my father's handwriting, a single word. Found. I pressed the photo against my chest and closed my eyes. Found. My knees softened. I sat on the carpet and let the word walk around the room, touching all the places where her absence had made little shrines. I used to think grief was a storm that eventually moved on. I had not understood it was climate. I hid the photo in the pocket of my jacket and waited for morning like people wait for forgiveness without knowing what shape it will take. Dawn limped in gray and quiet. He lifted suitcases into the truck with the mechanical focus of a man who trusts his arms more than his heart. "Ready?" he asked, eyes hiding behind sunglasses he never used to wear. I nodded because my words were sand and my mouth was the tide. We drove without conversation. The highway unrolled like something tired of holding itself together. Towns passed. Gas stations nodded. The radio stayed off, as if music would be rude to the silence we were carrying. "Where are we going?" I asked finally. "Somewhere better," he said. "Better than what?" He didn't answer, and the question followed us like a stray dog that didn't know which one of us would be kind. At a roadside station, he left his phone glowing on the passenger seat when he went inside. I stared at it the way you stare at a door that might open on its own. A message sat at the top of the screen. She is asking if you'll bring her this time. My pulse tripped. I picked it up and swiped. The thread opened like a curtain. I miss you. We'll be waiting. Tell her when the time's right. There were photos too. The same house from the picture. Mom framed by a doorway. A boy with eyes full of first questions. I scrolled and scrolled until the months rearranged themselves into a story I had never been given. He hadn't been running from a ghost. He had been running toward a person. He came back with 2 waters and a face that wanted to be casual. You okay? I set his phone down gently, the way you put down something that could still hurt you. Yeah, I lied and tasted metal in the back of my mouth. We drove to the coast, where the land remembers to bow to the water. At a motel that smelled like bleach and old vacations, he fell asleep quickly, his body efficient at shutting down what his mind couldn't fix. I sat by the window and watched fog braid itself over the ocean. Then I opened my laptop and created a new email using Mom's maiden name, a small act of reclamation. I typed 1 sentence. He's bringing me tomorrow, finally. My finger hovered over the send button, trembling the way birds do before they trust a branch. I pressed it. The room didn't change, but I did. I wasn't waiting for permission anymore. Morning arrived cold and indifferent. He tied down the last bag on the truck bed. Where exactly are we going? I asked, as if I didn't already know. Someplace peaceful. You mean her place? For a heartbeat he stilled, a statue of someone who had been caught by time. You went through my phone. You went through my life. He looked at me then, all the way. I watched the apology reach his eyes and lose his courage before it found his mouth. He didn't say anything. He started the engine, and the truck obeyed like it always had. The house was exactly as the photo had promised. White walls, blue shutters, the ocean like a loud neighbor beyond the fence. She stepped onto the porch, smaller than memory but carrying the same gravity. The wind lifted her hair, and for a moment, a lifetime tried to stitch itself back together. You came, she said. Her voice was softer, as if the years had sanded it down. I did, I answered. Did he tell you? He told me nothing. I found out everything. Behind me, Dad stood with his hands in fists he wasn't using. Why now? I turned to him. Why after 5 years? Why sell my car and call it a plan? Why make me bury someone who wasn't dead? It wasn't simple, he said, and the words sounded like bags stacked in a hallway, heavy blocking in the way. He was protecting you, Mom added, her eyes wet with hope that had been wrong before. Protecting me from what? I asked, and my voice surprised me by not breaking. From the truth? From my own mother? I pulled a photo from my pocket and held it up. This house, that man, this new life. Did you forget to invite me to it, or was that the point? Her mouth wavered. He's your brother, she said, almost pleading. He's innocent. I know he is, I said, and meant it. But innocence is not a currency that pays what you owe the living. Dad scrubbed a hand over his face. I wanted to tell you, he said, voice thin with the weight he was finally carrying. She asked me not to. She said it would make it worse. You didn't spare me, I said. You stranded me. The wind answered for them because they couldn't. I walked to the edge of the yard where a wooden fence pretended the ocean could be contained. They followed at a distance, as if proximity might be mistaken for repair. You both broke me, I said quietly. But broken doesn't mean useless. It means rebuilt. I handed Mom the photo. Keep it, you've kept plenty. I turned to Dad. Stop calling yourself a victim of her choice when your choice was silence. Silence is a decision. It has fingerprints. He flinched the way people do when they are seen. I moved toward the gate, and the 3 of us became a strange geometry that didn't add up. The path to the beach was a ribbon of sand and scrub grass. The ocean was loud and busy, uninterested in our small catastrophe. I stepped onto the wet sand, and the ground received me like an old friend who knew better than to ask questions. They called my name hers first, then his, then both together as if harmony might do what honesty hadn't. I didn't turn. Not because hate is stronger than love. Because sometimes love grows up and leaves. I walked until the voices melted into the surf. I stood at the edge where water rehearses coming and going. The horizon was a straight promise. I let the wind comb through my hair and exhaled a breath that had been stuck in me since the night Mom didn't come home. I thought about forgiveness and found quietly, gently, that I had already done it. It wasn't glittery or grand. It was simply the weight that fell from my shoulders when I realized I didn't have to carry their choices anymore. People think forgiveness is a key that unlocks someone else's door. It isn't. It's a pair of shoes. You put it on and walk away lighter. I forgave them because I wanted to be free on weekdays, not just in poems. I forgave them because my anger, though energetic, was expensive, and I was done paying in hours I couldn't get back. For a while I just listened. The waves had a rhythm that didn't mind me borrowing it. They rose, they folded, they rose. I imagined my life reorganizing itself. Mornings that didn't ask old questions. Afternoons that forgot the schedule of loneliness. Evenings when I didn't check windows for headlights I knew weren't coming. I pictured a small apartment with plants that didn't know my history. A job where my name didn't echo. Friends who hadn't memorized my tragedies. I pictured laughter without apology. It didn't feel like pretending. It felt like packing. Behind me, the sand hissed with footsteps. I turned halfway and saw them at the top of the path, two figures not touching. She lifted a hand that couldn't quite decide if it was waving or surrendering. He stood as if gravity had just doubled. I gave them a small nod that said the truth. I don't hate you. I also don't live here anymore. Then I faced the water again, not to reject them but to choose me. I remembered the car like a prayer. The nights I drove until the city became a rumor. The way the highway held me the way arms should. I thought I needed the machine but I had misunderstood. Freedom isn't a thing. It is an agreement you make with yourself. I will not anchor my future to other people as storms. He had sold the car, but he couldn't sell my decision. The sun climbed, spilling gold as if someone had tipped a cup above the horizon. I closed my eyes and let the warmth lay over my face. I said, not loudly, I'm done chasing ghosts. The sentence didn't rearrange the clouds, but it rearranged me. Some part of me stood up from a chair it had occupied for 5 years and walked to the door. I thought about the boy in the photo. I thought about the version of my mother who had been drowning quietly long before she swam away. I thought about my father holding his breath inside a lie because he didn't trust the storm to pass. We were all amateurs at being human. The best I could do now was graduate. I turned and started walking along the shoreline, leaving footprints that filled with water and then were mine again and then weren't. I didn't know where I was going yet, but the old ache wasn't steering anymore. I walked until the cliff path began, a trail that lifted me above the house with blue shutters, shrinking it to a toy, then a dot, then a memory too small to bruise. On the ridge, the wind was stronger. It pinned my jacket to my ribs and made a flag of my hair. I imagined calling a friend and asking if their couch remembered me. I imagined filling a notebook with new rules. Eat when you're hungry. Sleep when you're tired. Say no when your body whispers it. Answer only to the name you give yourself. The future didn't promise to be gentle. It promised to be mine. It was enough. I sat on a flat rock warmed by a sun that didn't take sides. A gull cried the way metal does when it's being bent into something useful. I thought about what I might tell someone who asked me what happened, how much to share, how to shape it so it didn't become my whole identity. I decided I would start with the ocean. I would say, it taught me that leaving and returning can both be acts of love. Then I would talk about a girl who misunderstood revenge and then learned the version that fits. Not destruction, not spectacle, not winning an argument, but refusing to let your pain decide the color of your days. Revenge, I realized, is peace you earn in a place no one else can touch. When I finally stood, my legs hummed with the good kind of tired, the kind you get after you carry only yourself. I took the path down. At the bottom, near the gate, I paused and looked once more toward the porch. They were gone from sight, busy with their own reckonings. I hoped they were kind to themselves in ways they hadn't been to me. I hoped they found, if not joy, then honesty. If not reconciliation, then responsibility. I hoped the boy grew up knowing more than one version of family. The wind shifted, bringing me their voices blurred, yes, but less sharp than before. I smiled without showing my teeth, the way you do when something inside you sits down and laughs softly for no reason. I touched the fence with my fingertips, a little ceremony, and then stepped back onto the road. The truck wouldn't take me anywhere this time. Good. I didn't want to be carried. I wanted to arrive. I walked toward the town, toward a bus stop where strangers would be polite and not ask me to retell myself. I would go home my home, which wasn't a place yet but would be, and I would make tea and open my laptop. I would search for jobs and rooms and classes for beginners. I would write the first paragraph of a life that looked nothing like the last chapter. And if I needed to cry halfway through, I would, and then I would keep typing. I reached the stop as the bus sighed to a halt, big and blue and unbeautiful in the way things are when they're busy being useful. I climbed on, found a seat by the window, and let the engine hum under my ribs. As the house with blue shutters slipped behind a curve, I pressed my palm to the glass. Goodbye, I said, not to them, not exactly, but to the version of me that believed love meant waiting forever in a doorway. The road unspooled. The bus filled with the ordinary music of people living coughs, bags, a baby announcing new feelings. I watched sunlight stencil moving trees across the aisle. I thought, I will buy a plant and not apologize to it. I will hang a mirror and not flinch. I will call my laughter back by its first name. I thought, I will be new and also the same, and that is not a contradiction. That is a miracle. If anyone asks me later what this story is, I won't say it's about betrayal, though it is. I won't say it's about revenge, though it was. I'll tell them it's about freedom and how it arrives dressed like quiet. It sits down next to you on a bus in the middle of a weekday and says, "Look, the sky still knows your name." And you look up, and it does. The bus turned toward the city. I leaned my head against the window and closed my eyes, not to sleep, but to memorize the sound of moving on. Somewhere behind me, a door at a white house was closing gently. Somewhere ahead, another door was opening without a sound. I didn't need to choose between them anymore. I opened my eyes to the day that was choosing me.